Hi everyone. Hi Nishit.
Hello. Hello, sir.
So that's visible now?
Yes, it is.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. So I think a quick introduction to TNI Career Counseling. We're a certified global admissions advisory and career resource management and test prep venture. Um, we provide admissions advisory right from the start of mentoring the student or the candidate to providing the early advice, the profile building, and the resume building that needs to be done. Even the test preparations, whether it's GMAT or GRE or TOEFL or IELTS. And, we cover about 1,200 universities across 12 countries. So what you just see in front of you is, our gamut of services, right from mentoring, college application, test preparation, even post-admit process, including the loan, visa, travel, all of that. Today's session is going to be more focused on the global education, scenario of UK, USA, Canada, and Australia. And what we will do is consider certain elements that you need to do while you're choosing your colleges and your specific portfolio and, external courses, etc. What are the top universities? What are the post-study work options? And just a quick, section on any question and answers or any questions that, those who are here have and answers that our, candidates can provide or our alumni can provide, I'd say. So this is a little about me. I am the founder and CEO here at TNI Career Counseling, which is also called Globestar EduTech. The idea of today's session was to work with students and candidates across to kind of review admission strategies, understand geographies, country requirements. And today being a Saturday, we thought that we will see candidates. Probably it's either an off day for many of them. Those who have alternative Saturdays working, they tend to have a holiday today. So we thought this would be perfect. And we have two of our alumni also who we helped or mentored, over a time period, who are going to be present today. And you can already see Nishit, who's one of the candidates. And there's Jaspreet. And I think Jaspreet might not have joined. I know that he was actually on a trek in Scotland. And he was going to attempt to try and join. I don't know if that was going to be possible. But let's quickly go through both the candidates. So Jaspreet is or completed his MBA from London Business School, graduated from Auckland University of Technology with a bachelor's and master's in 2018, and was working at ANZ Grensley's Bank for about 4 years. We worked with him or mentored him through his process, where he also got a 331 in the GRE. And post that he applied to about 5 universities that we positioned him for, and LBS was one of them. Duke, Cambridge, NYU, these were all the other options where he received admits to all of them. And I think I wish he was here. If he, hopefully he joins in at some point in time. But I'd love to move on to Nishit and let Nishit also talk a little bit. Nishit is a graduate from Mumbai's HR college with a BCom. Very well accomplished, I must say. Has a CA, also completed a CFA. Was working at Axis Bank for about 2 years, and then Deutsche Bank for 2.5. You can correct me if I'm wrong anywhere, Nishit. But Nishit came to me a little early on, where I was a part of an MBA tour, and we had met over there, and it was more of a resume review. And he connected to me later, a little bit last moment, because he had completed his CFA, all 3 levels, got a certificate, and said, now I'm ready to go and apply for an MBA. And I thought he was a fantastic candidate for an MBA program. but just had to get the story right. And so he applied to the US first and then to Australia. And then he chose to go to Australia, for his MBA. So a 16-month program at University of Sydney, which I'm sure he'll talk more about. So I'll quickly move on and just questions that I have for the panelists here. Just a second. So, Nishit, if I, since you're here, I'll just quickly ask you, and why did you choose a master's MBA? And, we have a whole list of questions here, but maybe you can just enlighten those who are present here about your journey.
Yeah, so I think just before that, you said I could correct you where you were wrong, but I think you know me well enough to be right, so I don't have the need to correct you. But I think, yeah, coming to your question, I think an MBA, because unlike an Indian MBA, which you generally do either immediately after your undergraduation or maybe a year or two of work experience and then you do an IIM. I was at a stage of my career where I had already had 4.5 years of work experience, and add to that 3 years of articleship, so close to 7.5 years. And at that stage, I thought a foreign MBA made slightly more sense because it just gave me a global perspective, especially in the globalized times that we are living in. So I thought it might be better to experience the multicultural, multi-diverse phenomenon that is very prevalent at the University of Sydney, which is why I chose an MBA.
Wonderful. And how did you go about choosing the country and the program?
So I think this is probably the toughest decision to make, and I don't think there is a right or wrong answer to this. For me personally, the reason was I chose Australia because I wanted to have the right balance between academics, profession, as well as personal life. And I thought some of the slightly more Western countries were far too uh, involved in the 12-hour jobs. Compared to that, Australia is slightly more chilled. Having said chilled, not in terms of the weather, but in terms of the work-life balance, which is why I chose a slightly unconventional route, and I, it seems to be paying off. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, I'm very glad that it is, and you're at Deloitte. You're doing something which you're interested and passionate about. I understand that Australia has treated you well, and it's the kind of balance that you want, for your life. So definitely something I would want you to talk about more. But after we kind of finish the
Yeah.
questions on the application process, and then you can definitely enlighten everyone about your experience. So what were some of your key challenges, considerations during this application process?
So I think, as you said, for me, the challenge was that I was relatively late in applying to a business school because I was already in March for a MBA that was scheduled to start in August, September. So I was effectively in the third round for almost all business schools, and that in a way restricted the options that I had. But I still chose to go ahead with it. But so that was definitely a challenge, and in hindsight, what if I could have waited for a year will always be a question that I'll ask myself. But that's probably the challenge, and the advice probably would be to start early, preferably in the first round, so that you know where you are and then you can take calculated decisions going forward. I think the biggest consideration for me was how likely I am to land a job after my MBA, or preferably during my MBA itself, because it's the if the investment that I'm making is in Australian dollars or Canadian dollars or UK pound or US dollars, I think at some point the recovery also has to be in the same currency, at least till the time my initial investment is recouped. So the consideration was how likely I am to get a job. what is the starting salary, and what's the payback period. And having made a sense of this, add to that the work-life balance that Australia gave me, I thought it was probably the way to go. I hope I'm not sounding like the Minister of Tourism for the government of Australia.
No, not at all. But yeah, I think maybe your motivations, so while we're looking at key challenges, were there any challenges that you faced in your application process? Because, it's the first time that you took something like this up, right? So I'm sure that there were certain considerations while you were looking at the US versus Australia. And, in the US, you received scholarships from, at least the universities that you applied to, right? You got acceptances to all of them. You had scholarships, with all these universities. Um, and I think in the case where you applied for a master's of finance also, right? Because you were split between should I do an MBA, should I do a master's in finance, while you already had a CFA, right? And that's the discussion that we had at a point in time that, what would actually make more sense, given that you were at that sort of stage. So you of course chose an MBA and chose to go to Australia and do University of Sydney, and more so also because that wasn't a very long 21-month course. You went through a 16 months, which also sort of made sense for you, right? So I assume that these are some of your considerations while you
Yeah.
were actually applying. So maybe just throwing a little bit more light on that in terms of challenges versus considerations would help.
Yeah. I think the duration of the course is certainly a factor, because the lesser the duration of the course, the
Yeah.
lesser the dollar investment. That's definitely the case. I think the other important thing, and which is where I think the experience of somebody who has been in this business long enough helps, is the fact that each university and each program has certain nuances that are difficult for me to acknowledge and understand by simply looking at their websites or connecting to an alum. So I think that is where TNI might actually be able to guide students specifically about what exactly is the niche or the crux that the program or the university is targeting. For example, my university and my program is essentially MBA in leadership and enterprise. So when I today conduct interviews of MBA candidates, what we specifically look for is to ensure that the candidate has demonstrated or has the capability to demonstrate leadership qualities. Now, this is such a niche thing that is unlikely to be understood or acknowledged enough by you if you simply scroll through the LinkedIn page of the university or the website. This is probably, these are aspects that the sir and team might be able to assist in terms of getting it spot on in the essay as well as in the interview.
No, absolutely. And also, did you proactively engage with the alumni and school, while you were, putting your entire application together? What were some of the things that you also did, that sort of helped you make this decision, right, ultimately?
Yeah, so I think this is again, the more the number of sources from where you get the information from, the more likely that you make the right decision, because decisions are either informed or ill-informed. In course of time, they eventually turn out to be good or bad. And I think one of the things that I did right, or at least that is what I think, is that I connected to a lot of alums. And when I say a lot of alums, I would say I connected to at least 400, 500 alums on LinkedIn, and physically talked with at least 50 alums on call or Zoom call or Google Meet. And I remember in the interview that I had with the business school, the admissions counselor actually told me that I am the most informed candidate amongst all the candidates that they had interviewed for our batch. And that was an unofficial yes from them. The official yes obviously came later, but I think talking with alumni is very, very important, because they give you first-hand insights, both good and bad, about the university and the program, which again, it might be difficult for you to understand based on your secondary research.
Absolutely. And that's why I feel that you were, an excellent candidate. And, while you were looking through this entire process, you really did a lot of the things that we discussed, very well. And,
Yeah.
and I think that, for us, to guide is one thing, but also for the candidate to really follow all those things that we discuss is key, because that's how you're really going to all the effort that you're putting in, you're going to see the result of the outcome, which is positive.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember you connected me with an alum to whom I talked to, and
yeah.
then he gave me a contact of his friend, and then his friend, and this chain just continued.
Absolutely. And that's the idea, that, you have to also be proactive from your perspective, because the more you follow up with people, the more they're going to come back and they're going to, see that you're interested. So they want, you to be also that applicant, because they can see that, right, within you. And they're like, I think that, if this person is trying so hard to connect, they're serious about this, and, we should help them out. And so that sort of becomes, important.
Yeah,
And so now that, of course, you engaged, and, you want to tell them a little bit more about, scholarships, because I know that when you applied, of course, you received a whole bunch of these simply because you were, one of those dream candidates for them as well, who really, put in effort into the application for every piece of it. The story would, of course, go draft. We would review it with you. We would figure out, what the LORs need to have, because everything needs to be a uniform, right? Your entire story, your strategy, your positioning has to be uniform. And, when that came across, and you worked really hard even on, the mock interview, because that made things more clear, right? Even to them while you were discussing things. Um, any advice that you have on scholarships? Because I know many of them came back to you and gave you scholarships, right? As a matter of fact, after you got them, you still called them up and spoke to the professors. And I
yeah,
think some
yeah,
of them said, no, we are going to give you even more scholarship now.
yeah. Yeah, they revised the scholarship upwards. I remember that. And I think for that was for Stevens, I believe. And uh, again, what helps is, so there are university specific scholarships, there are program specific scholarships, and then there are country specific scholarships. And all of this information can either be found online, or you have the convenience of TNI just to guide you through this. But I think again, what happens there is, it's important to demonstrate, and unlike in India, and this is actually one of the advantages of studying in globally accredited merit-based universities, is they pick the best candidates amongst all the candidates they have. There is absolutely no criteria uh, uh, for anything other than merit, and the amount of scholarship that you get would largely be a function of how good or bad you are compared to the other people applying for that scholarship, which is why again applying in the first round helps, because you have a larger pool of scholarships available. The other thing that I got was a teaching assistantship role under the program director, which I thought was which was actually a huge boost of confidence, because it meant that somebody was giving me a job before I had actually started the program. So the probability of me getting a job after I had finished the program was significantly higher. And of course, they eventually revised the scholarship upwards, which I will perennially remain grateful for. But this is something that I believe you help me quite a lot to ensure that we convey the right story in the right spirit, which I mean, I could have never got to that if I had done all of that alone.
So thanks, Nishit. No, I appreciate that. But I think a lot of effort was also put in from your side. And, as I said, direction we can give. And it's very important that the candidate puts in, the effort. Um, so once, of course, we've discussed that. How's your experience right now? With you, of course, you've graduated, recently, and how's your experience been at University of Sydney? So now that you've got the program, you selected, you went there, and I know it was, of course, the whole COVID time, so that was a challenging time for everyone. Um, what was Australia like for you? Was it exactly what you believed it would be? What was, the course like at University of Sydney? Whatever it is that you want to share.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I chose this program was the focus on the qualitative aspects of the MBA rather than the quantitative aspects of an MBA. An Indian MBA is generally largely quant-driven, data-intensive, especially the IIMs and ISB. The same would apply to a US MBA as well, I suppose, pretty much. I did my CA and CFA, which is a very quant-intensive course in India, and then worked in a quant field for another 5 years. So I thought for me to develop the qualitative aspect of my profile would add greater value to my overall resume 20 years down the line rather than doing a more quant intensive course again. So that's why I chose this course. And it has lived up to the expectation because the focus has largely been on leadership and enterprise. And you can see the difference at the way things are taught here compared to the way things are taught elsewhere, because we get to say, for example, in my batch itself, we had a politician from South Africa, a pilot from Russia, an Olympic medalist from Australia, and people who have been absolute rock stars in the profession that they've come from. This is unlikely to happen in an Indian MBA, and I'm not by any means demeaning an Indian MBA. My mother works in a leading business school, and I have lived almost a decade in the business school campus. So that I have special affinity for that. But I think I wouldn't have got the opportunity to hear live to a lot of people that, in terms of the guest lectures and opportunities that are here, that are available here. We went to the World Government Summit in Dubai. We represented the University of Sydney there, which was probably, I would say, the highest point of my MBA, where you get to represent not just your university, but your country at a global scale in front of a 20,000 packed crowd in Dubai. So that was, of course, the fully funded first class flight tickets from Emirates and the staying in 5-star hotel helps. But it was incredible the way the university has, in a way, given us the opportunity, and more than that, the value for money for the entire program.
Yeah, brilliant. And what was your living arrangement? What was your campus life like? Maybe if you want to talk about the certain highlights of the program as well.
So there was the option to live in campus, but generally living in campus is expensive, so we tend to live outside campus. We still have access to almost all the facilities in the campus, but I per se didn't live in the campus, although I went to the campus pretty often. And I would say that is one thing that, again, an Indian MBA would probably be better at in terms of the campus experience of living alongside 200, 300 candidates of your age. For me, the age gap was significant. The youngest candidate was 24 and the oldest candidate was 37. And there were just 50 candidates in our batch. So that is one thing that probably I missed. But the other important thing that I forgot to mention was last week, the FT rankings came in, the Financial Times rankings came in. And University of Sydney's MBA, which is what I did, was ranked 61st in that top 100. 61st is higher than IIM Calcutta, by the way. So, and it's the first in Australia. So that's probably objective assessment of all of what I've said.
No, absolutely. You should feel proud.
Yeah.
So and I'm glad. So the thing is that why I want to focus also on how much Australia or what Australia has to offer is also something that you can kind of vouch for, right? Whereas there are, places where many candidates might not have found the best fit. What is the ground reality for those who come in, whether you're doing an MBA? I'm sure you've built a peer group. You've got friends who might have just graduated with a master's, not even an MBA. What is the general consensus there? How's life in Australia for the most of them? And after you graduate, and what were placements like for you? What is the general because of course Australia saw a dip in applications when the COVID happened, and then they were the last country that released so that students could come in. So it took a little bit of time, right, for Australia to sort of open up and things to start getting, and of course we're seeing a large number of applications now, right? So there's been a significant upturn to that. But what are you seeing on the ground?
So I think the Australian economy is as not as big as the Indian economy or the US economy. That's no denying that. And the growth rate is also significantly lower, so it's not going to improve anytime soon either. Having said that, I think where Australia is probably slightly advantageous for candidates like us is the concept of skill shortages, where there are a lot of immigrants coming into the US and UK, whereas there is not as many immigrants coming to Australia, given the slightly more, I would say, stricter rules on the visa front for work visas.
Hmm.
Uh, Therefore, I think what helps is having a core skill before an MBA. Could be engineering, could be data science, could be medicine, and then doing an MBA would actually you still qualify for that occupation list so that you are eligible for the visas. So I'm still an accountant by occupation or an auditor by occupation, and then the MBA just adds to it. But if you lack a skill of substance or a work experience of substance in any specific domain, to then do an MBA and to expect that things will fall into place is relatively unlikely to happen. That might actually happen in the US, where the MBA in itself is a degree that can help you pivot into investment banking. But in Australia, unless you have something core at your substance before your master's degree, it's slightly more trickier.
Hmm. Makes sense. And what was your experience of recruiting? That now that are at Deloitte, and when you were graduating, can you talk a little bit about internships and your full-time placements? What were they like?
Yeah, so I think the advantage that we had was, and I think more than the advantage, we were lucky that we were the first batch that came to Australia after COVID. So there was a significant shortage of skilled workers during the time we came in. So there was a high demand for workers and there was relatively less supply. So we got an opportunity. Many of us got an opportunity to work part time at at big firms. For example, I got into Deloitte into my third month of the MBA itself. But it just so happened that I was at the right place at the right time. So that was to an extent, but there were quite a few people who got internship opportunities as well. I think uh, as long as you have a decent work experience on your CV and you know what you've done and what you're talking about, it's more likely that the recruiter will give you an opportunity in a field, even if you have no specific experience of that particular field. So as long as you have the ability to tell your story in the most creative and succinct way possible, it definitely helps.
And what was it like, because it's so much diversity and, you come as an Indian candidate, you have to settle into, even though you're a cohort of 50, um, how many Indians did you have, for instance? And what was the diversity pool? And what was it like, kind of, working with everyone and, sort of, driving projects? Because I know there's a lot of teamwork stuff you all do. And what was that experience like? Was there an adjustment phase? Was there a learning curve?
Yes, I think that was the ability to deal with people who are dissimilar to us is my single biggest learning of the MBA. And it's difficult to know that while we are in India, even if you are a part of a multinational setup like Deutsche Bank. The reason being, so our cohort was 50. I think in percentage terms, it was the most diverse cohort we could have asked for, because the 50 candidates came from 21 countries. That's actually a lot.
Yeah.
That's actually a lot. And we had six Indians. We had six Indians, uh, the highest. But for most courses and for most programs, 60% of the batch is Indians and Chinese. For us, it was close to 15-20%. So we had people from Papua New Guinea to Ireland to Zimbabwe and Kenya and everybody. And the advantage of that is we get to know stories about how an individual ran an NGO in Nigeria that helped to fund, that helped to elevate hunger, for example. that's difficult to know sitting in Mumbai for us. So I think that level of humility, that there are people who know more about a lot of things than me, struck me really hard and really early. And in course of time, I've I would say I've made a number of friends both within our cohort as well as the previous cohorts and now the next cohort that's coming.
Brilliant. And anything else that you want to share in terms of any tips? I know you have been sharing tips on various aspects, but anything that you would want students or candidates to look at? And also you can shed some light on your visa experience, how easy or difficult it was to get a student visa for Australia. And now that you are probably possibly looking at a PR application, how is that process ongoing as well?
Yeah, so I think the visa experience is probably the best amongst all the countries that we're talking. I mean, most likely you get a visa in 15 days. I got a visa in 3 days. 99% of the cases there are no interviews. It's pretty straightforward. So the student visa is the easiest part. So after the student visa, you become eligible for a post-study work visa, which is a 3-year work visa that allows you to stay in Australia for at least 3 years, with or without a job. Most likely, you would get a job after your program, and during those 3 years, it's up to us to figure out how do we plan to extend that stay beyond the 3 years. It could be through three options. One is we file PR application ourselves. So that's the equivalent of a green card, in which you're allowed to stay in Australia for an indefinite period of time. It's permanent residency. The other is you look for an employer that sponsors your work visa. That is for a temporary period. It's by definition work visa. And the third and the best case scenario, which is what has worked out, thankfully, in my case, is an employer who's sponsoring your permanent residency. So the employer, in my case, Deloitte, says that we need this candidate. The skills that this candidate possesses, we cannot find it in this country, and there is value in having this candidate in Australia. And Deloitte makes an application on my behalf to the government of Australia, in which case it's relatively easy and fast. So once that is done, we generally get the PR in 6 to 9 months. So I'm expecting that by the end of this year latest. And that's the equivalent of green card. Within a couple of years, you can get citizenship if you'd like to. That is one of the reasons I chose Australia as well, because I did not want to wait in an H-1B and a green card queue for 12 years, and then for the citizenship for another 10 years. That's 20 years in total. So that's again one of the reasons.
Brilliant. No, I think that's been very, very helpful. I wonder to see if any candidates here, Shifa, Rucha, Pulak, or Puchaba, or did any one of you all have any questions for Nishit? If anyone has any questions in particular, I'd be happy to put that to Nishit. I don't see any hands up either. So probably nothing that I. Okay, yeah, Rucha.
Hello. I would like to ask Nishit about, since he mentioned that he started applying really late in the February and March. That's the same case with me. I'm starting applications by now, and I haven't taken any date for my GMAT. So that's what I wanted to inquire about. Is it really possible? And since he's a good example that even with late applications, he could secure his dream institute or university. So I want to know more about it.
So Rucha, you might want to just talk a little bit more, particularly about yourself. Give us some background, because that's going to help
Yes.
us understand.
Absolutely, yes. Um, I did my mechanical engineering back in 2018, and after that I was preparing for civil services for 2 and 3 more years. Later, I started my own company in sustainable energy consultancy, and since last 2 years, I'm handling it along with my brother as a director.
Got it. So now that you have that background, what was your CGPA, for instance? If you give me a sense.
It's in terms of percentage, I was always above 70% during my engineering.
Okay. All right. And right now you said your only work experience is your own startup. Is that what I understand?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Nishit, anything that you would like to first say before?
And which course and which program, which university and which program are you considering?
I'm planning for 1 year global MBA in two or three universities. One is Izadi, Spain. HEC Paris, I'm not sure how tough it would be for me with this experience. And the third is London, Hult one.
Mhm.
Mostly I'm focusing on Europe region itself.
Okay. So, sir, do you want to take, or I mean,
I mean, I can definitely, tell her, but if there's anything that you want to add, Nishit, before,
so I would, at a more general level, I would say that probabilistically it's less likely in the third round. The amount of scholarship is again likely to be less than it would have been in the first round. Is it possible? Yes. How likely it is or how unlikely it is depends on a lot of factors, including the number of applications that they've already approved, your luck, and the GMAT score that you might get. But my sense is it's February end already, and if you haven't given GMAT by now, then probably to give a GMAT in the next 1 month and then to apply in April and then expect the outcome in May, it might get a little tricky. You might still pull it off if you're lucky enough, but you may have to compromise something. The one thing that I learned the hard way, and I think it's important for me to say this because everything so far has been hunky-dory and it never really is that I actually applied to London Business School for Masters of Finance as well. And I was selected for the interview stage. My interview went very well. Well, not very well, and my interviewer actually approved my candidature. The reason why I was rejected at London Business School for a Masters of Finance was, and this I got to know unofficially, was that uh, every year they have a quota for the number of Indian students that they can have. Generally, the number of Indian students gets filled up in the first couple of rounds, and therefore, howsoever good you are in the third round, it's unlikely if you are an Indian student to get into it, unless you're an Olympic medalist from India, in which case the dynamics obviously change. But I think that is the reason why I didn't get into that, despite everything else getting ticked off. And I was told by them that if I applied so once you get rejected for a program in a particular year, you cannot apply for the same program in the next year, because they consider it to be your candidate. You wouldn't have evolved significantly for them to reconsider your candidature. So they suggested me to not apply for the next year, but apply for the year thereafter, which is 2024 now. I didn't want to wait for 2 years, and therefore I took the punt in 2022. It didn't pay off, but that's just an example of how leaving it. I applied on the last day of the last round. Can you imagine how late that is?
Right.
And clearly it was not going to work. It was just a outside chance. I went on to the interview stage, but it didn't go further. Would I have got in if I had applied for the first round of the next year? That we'll never get to know the answer, but probabilistically it was more likely.
Right, makes sense. One more I would like to ask about, you mentioned about the alumni, connecting with alumni, and will you please elucidate it little bit more?
I think connecting with alumni is probably very important. I would say it's one of the most important things, because you hear it from the horse's mouth. They have been in that position that you are today. Then they have lived that experience for 1.5, 2 years, whatever it is, and now they are working somewhere. So they've seen the entire cycle, and they'll give you far more honest opinion about the program and the course than the university itself, because if you connect with me offline, I'll tell you why you should not pursue in the University of Sydney and why you should not choose Australia. This
Right.
is difficult for the university to advertise on their website or for the
Absolutely.
country
Yes.
to advertise on. And if you ask 10 people, you'll get to know 10 different things, but there will be 2 or 3 common themes across all those conversations. That is what you need to pick up and make your decision on the basis of. The response rate would be less than 10%, but if you connect with 500 people, you will have 50 calls.
Okay.
So that's the whole idea, is that there's a lot of effort that you as a candidate has to put in, and there has to be a starting point, a direction, or a strategy put in place. So that's probably the most important thing one needs to do. I think he's already told you, Rucha, that you can look at it or applications this year. But one is, if you're applying to universities like an HEC or an LBS or an LSE, any of those top universities, because you're a South Asian candidate, what happens is that one is that they have a quota. Number two is they want to see higher scores if you have less experience, for instance, or even generally, they know that the South Asians typically have scores which are higher for GMAT, or in some cases even GRE, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then it's important that you can at least score to that extent. So if you have certain things, but that's not just it. The idea is that when you're actually looking at your application, how good is your resume? How have you positioned your your work experience, or what it is that you've done, how your recommenders are recommending you. A lot of those things really need to fall in place. So it's your entire application as a whole. That's where you need the most amount of effort. And then all these other things that add up to it is talking to alumni, all of that. That's more of a decision making tool, right? Because ultimately you need to know
Right.
where you
Yeah.
want to go. But one thing is that really positioning your application, that's the most primary thing for you to get those admissions.
Right. Absolutely.
Just one thing I think that disclaimer is important is that when I applied in March and April, or in Feb and March rather, I had already completed my all 3 levels of CFA and got the CFA charter. One of the
Okay.
there is a memorandum of understanding between the CFA Institute USA and
Okay.
almost all business schools in the world. I would say almost all business schools in the world, that the GMAT gets waived off if you are
Okay.
CFA charter holder. So I didn't
Okay.
have to give a GMAT. I didn't have to quote my GMAT
Right.
score.
Yeah.
That's the difference between you and me in February.
Though,
Right. Right.
though someone like a Stanford will definitely still ask you a GMAT score.
Ah.
So even though you have, so that's what you just have to know. Certain programs, the way they function is that if they're
Mm-hmm.
asking it from every candidate, they will ask you. So the waiver is
Right.
sort of there, but it's not there for certain programs. So you have to be a little
Right.
careful. That's where, it becomes tricky. Knowing what is important, where, how, all those nuances is what becomes important. So when you're also talking to alumni, they will give you some of these, and so if you're looking at top US programs, they're called M7 programs. Now, those
Okay.
M7 programs are fairly challenging, and everyone here, at least from India, looks to apply to those. So they'll start now in February to make it to the early round, which is in September.
Okay.
Right. So
Right.
then
Yeah.
if you're looking at even Europe, for instance, you still want to work. So if Jaspreet was here, he would actually tell you a little bit more, because he applied to, all
LBS.
universities like
Right.
Cambridge and all of that. So you would know
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more about that. But
Okay.
yeah, I think, whatever you were mentioning is sort of valid. As a matter of fact, we were just going to go through a couple of slides to give you a little bit of a better idea on that as well,
Yeah.
which I'm sort of happy to do. But other than that, if there's any other questions that anyone has, happy to take them.
Thank you for all the process explanation.
Most welcome. So I'll just quickly go through these slides. So this is just giving you a quick, analysis of how, and what we've actually seen in terms of applications across Canada, USA, UK, Australia. So you actually see these numbers which have, risen, I think, post-COVID. You've seen, a fairly significant rise. even in the UK, which is, slightly closer, and we've seen a pretty huge increase. And then we've actually seen increase within masters versus an MBA as well, right? So this is what we've kind of seen is what numbers are across, different countries. So in USA, of course, we've seen higher numbers. And what are the top universities in the US that we've actually seen a lot of these numbers go towards is here on the screen. Same for UK. We've seen, a fairly significant number and a jump. And I showed you 2023 as well. That's also shown a pretty high number. And then, of course, Canada is what you've seen, which will probably be tapering off now because of what has actually been happening. So we will see a little bit of a tapering off there. There's a number of reasons, whether it's, inflation or, just, the sheer number of visas that they're giving out and the rejection rates being higher. They're just being a bit more protectionist on that side. But that doesn't mean that if you're going to top universities, you still have those admits and you have a better chance of going, if you want to. So it's not like we are, this is a very fit thing. It depends on the fit. And so we're not saying this one's better than the other. It depends on what you really want to achieve. Like, what are your goals? So that's very important. And then, of course, Australia, what you heard recently, and you saw what the numbers are and how the numbers have been also sort of improving, right? Now, the question which a lot of y'all were sort of asking also is, how do you go about this whole process, right? So, and that's exactly what Nishit was explaining, is really knowing what you want, having that discussion, building your list of schools, programs that interest you. What is your financial status, funding, how much are you ready to spend? And then discuss, the place and the location, and then reach out to alumni, current students for the program. And that's where we support and help, the process. So when you come to us, this is where we sort of help, with your research and analysis, because you want someone who can give you a realistic opinion about, okay, I've thought about all these things. I really need to engage in a conversation and now figure out, am I really on the right path? And these are some emerging specializations that we've actually seen. So even though we are today talking about an MBA, we have seen, whether it's to do with computer science and information or technology or data science, analytics, finance, accounting, and there could be not just an MBA, but a master's specialization as well. We've also seen an increase in environmental sciences, sustainability, international relations, education leadership. These are just some emerging specializations. And then these are just some top, MBA schools that we see across the US, UK, Canada, Australia. Of course, there are variations every year for rankings, and that also depends on many factors. So, different ranking engines, right, from QS to like Financial Times to Bloomberg to US News, everyone kind of potentially works on it differently. And that's why you will see change in ranking somewhere or the other. So we've not really, put this in terms of a ranking, but the idea is to kind of what is really the fit. So if you look at Wharton or Columbia or Harvard, most of these all fall between the M7, categories. M7 is the top, 7 schools. And that sort of follows along, they're typically in the top, 7 to 10 within the country. And that's what we've tried to kind of shortlist and put across, that if you're looking at these, of course, they could tend to be expensive if you are not really, going to the first round. If you're going to the first round, you are improving your chances of getting in and also getting scholarships. And then this is just a quick list of scholarships. But, the one thing that you need to understand is that scholarships is something that you potentially get for both your master's and MBA, very much available today, a way for them to attract talent. They want good students. And these scholarships are available at the university level. Also, some foundations give a certain scholarship. Plus, of course, you have, maybe like a Goldman Sachs or an HSBC, banks giving certain scholarships out. There's a, Chevening scholarship, which is well known, or Rhodes as a scholarship, which is well known for the UK. So, particularly there are certain scholarships. We've also got many of them who have actually received these scholarships and have done well. But starting a little ahead of time is where, you really are able to get these scholarships in place. Then what we've seen is stepwise sort of, country analysis. We've seen in masters and MBA, from India, how much would you spend here versus, if you're actually at Hong Kong, Singapore, how much more would you spend versus UK, Canada, Australia, France. The ROIs are slightly better. And then at the US is where you would spend a lot more also, but then you get, the work-life balance is not the same at the other country. You might end up working a lot more than you getting paid more as well. So organize, even this is just sort of a weightage. They look at your academics, your LOR, which is your letter of recommendation, your essays, your interviews, your GRE, GMAT, and then, your sort of holistic profile. So what kind of work you're doing in terms of leadership, that's the EC and CS that we call. And then just how competitive are these, it's just giving you a quick sense, whether you're doing a master's or an MBA, if you have 150 to 300 seats and you have these many applications coming from, say, 50 countries, you're looking at, say, 500 admits. And they only have a certain percentage of that, which they're going to give to international students. So, maybe it's 30, 35, somewhere there's 50%. But out of that lot of 50%, maybe the number of Indians might be 10, 15, 20%. So what are you really looking at ultimately is that you'd probably in top programs only have 30 or 40 admits for Indian students. So similarly for an MBA. So all these top MBA programs that you see, they don't see more than 30 or 40 admits with, say, 300, 400 applications coming in, right? So your admit rate is anyways much lower generally, for a South Asian candidate. So that's why starting early is fairly important. I think job prospects is something that you just heard Nishit actually talk about, whether you're in technology, finance, healthcare, engineering, marketing. There's a bunch of opportunities, but this is something that we can talk about on a one-to-one, if a candidate has, so we've got, candidates right from medical school to coming from, entrepreneurship backgrounds to someone who's actually working at an MNC and says, okay, this is what I really want. The idea is to really construct what you really want from your experience. And then so that we can actually show you the pathways or programs that would make sense. I don't think Nishit was able to discuss his particular, areas that he took. And Nishit, you can actually do that because I forgot to ask you about that, but to mention what were the particular areas that you took in your MBA program?
You mean the subjects?
Yeah. So, like your major areas that you.
So it was, so the focus was on two things mainly. One was leadership practice and subjects relating to leadership practice like design thinking, leadership in business, critical analysis and thought leadership, nature of systems, these kind of courses which are unconventional, so to say. We still had the conventional courses of marketing, strategy, finance, and all of that. But I think this focus on leadership was clearly evident. The other thing that was there, and I think this is a common theme, irrespective of which program you do and which university we do, is the increasing focus on data analytics. So, of course, there were modules relating to data analytics specifically, but there was also an aspect of data analytics in every subject that we studied. An aspect of innovation, an aspect of the technological changes impacting each of those subjects individually. So that I think was the way the curriculum has evolved. And if anything, the pace of that evolution is only likely to increase going forward.
Awesome. And how much of what you've learned, I'm sure you've learned case studies and a whole lot of those things. How much of what you've learned you feel you are utilizing also at your job now?
That's actually a trick question. But I think at different stage, so I would say I've done my job for close to 1.5 years, I would say close to 1/4 of what I've studied has been directly or indirectly applied. But I might be applying the remaining 75% to other aspects of my life, not necessarily relating to job. For example, captaining my cricket team.
Yeah.
I draw a lot of insights from the leadership module that has been taught to us.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know, what I'm just going to quickly go to is, of course, visa info that, that was already shared with you is that, US has the F1 visa, which is a student visa. And, typically they look for liquid funds for your entire first year of study, or a bank loan while you're going to apply for that. And in the US, you get an OPT, which is a work visa for a year. And then, if you have a STEM degree, so most of the MBAs are STEM MBAs now. And so you can expect to get the 2 more years extra, because that's sort of required for the H-1B, process, because you go through a lottery system. And so it's important for you to, look for a STEM sort of a STEM certified MBA, which is what most of them have now. In the UK, of course, you get, 2 years sort of a work visa. And then, after that, we've seen some of them who probably even went to the Netherlands and started working because they couldn't find exactly what they wanted. And then, these sort of EU countries close by, they all offer a 1-year work visa if you've graduated from university in the UK. Canada, of course, the student visa is got a direct entry. It's an online process. Really, you can't control this. It's a little bit lengthy at times. It just feels like it's taking a while. UK again is fairly quick. They've actually moved the process in a much quicker fashion. UK and US both have kind of come up with these sort of visa processes which are much faster. But of course, with the UK, you need to put your funds in a bank account for like 27 days. They want to see that you have that money at least for the first year fees. But and that includes your tuition and your living costs and all of that. US just sees all of that, but you can take a loan, bank loan document, but they ask you some trick questions sometimes, in the visa interview. So you have to be sort of careful about that. Canada, of course, you need to put sort of an LOR for the visa as well. That's one additional thing. And then, of course, Australia, you're working towards a subclass 500, student visa, which I think, something that, Nishit went through. Nishit, did you work on campus while you were there? Or did you know some others who were working on campus?
Yes, many people.
Okay, so that sort of tends to happen because that happens for almost everyone, whether you're a master's or an MBA student. Even though you get a lot of course load and course work, you do tend to have some time to work, on campus, and that's what I've seen. A lot of even those who are from the country, they're paying their way through it, right? So they typically want to work, even if it's for a couple of hours a week. But did you have a lot of them from the MBA working? I feel like there are less of them working because there's a lot of cost load, right?
So yeah, in MBAs it's slightly lesser. For the masters, it's more.
Yeah.
The reason for MBA being lesser is, one, the average age of our batch was 31. So most of them were married, and quite a few of them had kids as well. So they didn't. Plus, they had 10 years of work experience and funds in their bank account, so they didn't have the need to work.
Sure. Great. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we're at the end of the session. I think we've surpassed our time. So thanks, Nishit, and I really appreciate the time you've taken. I hope this has been an informational session for everyone. I know that there was a link shared for a feedback form. If you all can just complete that, and that would actually, help. All right. And so you all can fill that out. And if you want to take an initial counseling appointment, you could just, I think that it's sort of mentioned there. There's a QR code and there's a form link over there. Maybe that's something that we go. So that's an initial counseling form link. And maybe if you all would like to take a counseling session or talk to us, we're happy to, take things further. But have a great weekend. And Nishit, we'd love to have you, come and talk about this at some point. I know today was a very sort of, I think a beginning of the weekend, and I feel like we're going to have a session at a more, time when it's easier to follow through. But I really appreciate the time that you could spend with at least the students that are here.
Yep. Thank you. Thank
The
you
candidates that
for
were here.
the opportunity.
And thanks for sharing your LinkedIn. I was going to say, I really appreciate that you did that.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.